Hello, everyone. Carter and I are back for the fourth time. I hope you've enjoyed the previous three. I am very excited for today. This is my favorite team that we're going over in this video. It is the one and only TSM.
Oh man, TSM. I mean, if there is nothing else to say about them, your previous 2020 summer LCS champions, albeit with a very different looking roster than what they're approaching the 2021 season with. But there's obvious what can't be said about this super storied organization. They're the most winning team in LCS history, and they've made some moves this offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think as a TSM fan, I can admit you kind of have to make some moves after what happened in Worlds after the
Yeah,
fact. But
yeah. After the big move,
after the big move. But they did have an incredible season, one of the best comeback stories we've ever seen in LCS, if not the best. I think we're going to be looking back on that one for quite a while, last summer playoffs, that is. And I've got to say, the team definitely isn't looking bad right now.
oh,
But it's all
not
been
at
built.
all.
I mean, I don't even want to say it's built around the only member that they kept, because it doesn't even feel like it. But that
Oh.
one remaining member is Spica, who
Yeah, so
whew.
Spica is kind of the only known quantity, the only known TSM quantity going in to the season. Like you said, it's kind of a stretch to say the roster was built around Spica because Spica really isn't the kind of player you're building your team around. Obviously, the biggest move of the offseason TSM wise was moving Bjergsen from the mid lane. Bjergsen retired rather, going into the coach position for TSM.
Yep.
So ever since then, it's kind of like TSM is almost like without its identity. Not to mention Doublelift also retiring this past season. The two kind of almost inarguable LCS greatest of all time. Both leaving TSM. And so like TSM was kind of in this weird place without the identity they've always had of like Bjergsen being the star player, Doublelift being a star player. Uh so Spica kind of like while he's in here as a supplemental piece to the rest of the roster, it's he was never the star of a TSM roster before, and it's like kind of hard to imagine him being one now. But that is not to say Spica is bad by any means. A top
Hmm.
North American jungler, based on like kind of everyone's assessment, one of the only North American players, probably the only North American player this past World season to pass the eye test. Of not being bad after TSM's 0-6 run at the World Championships.
Yeah.
So like Spica is their one retaining piece, and like if you had to hold on to one piece of that roster, you probably wanted it to be Bjergsen. You probably would have liked for it to have been Doublelift, but you're not going to complain about hanging on to Spica in this offseason.
No, absolutely not. I mean, Spica showed some of, as you said, the most redeemable TSM member during the international stage when they went 0-6. I even look back, they just kind of like Double Lift said, I think, that they had no trust at that point, but he did hit a five-man sleep on Lilia. His
Yeah.
Nidley
Oh my
remains to be
God.
one of the best Nidleys we've ever seen. And both those champions, as we've said in previous videos, they're looking pretty nice right now heading into this lock-in tournament. I think we're going to see a lot of pick ban for those two junglers.
Yeah,
And
Spica has always been known for
whew,
his Nidalee. He one tricked that thing in solo queue, and you can tell he's so comfortable at champion. And Nidalee's in a pretty good place still. You'll see him on that.
oh, absolutely. And if you're gonna start pointing at the jungler, if you're heading up against TSM, you're gonna point at the jungler for your bans, like a lot of people did against Bjergsen. That just opens up the roster for everyone else. And we have so many weapons, despite it being a four-person switch, which honestly is the case with a lot of teams this year. TSM might have gotten some of the better switches.
Yeah.
I immediately think of Power of Evil. They moved Bjergsen because Bjergsen doesn't like saying he retired. He just switched his role from mid lane
He
to
did.
coaching, and now you've moved PoE into that mid lane. Arguably one of the better mid laners, I think top three right now in the
Yeah,
LCS.
I think
Um,
almost inarguably top three. Power of Evil, as much as people love to talk about Bjergsen, back before Power of Evil was in North America, at the world stage, Power of Evil had a winning record over Bjergsen. Power of Evil, while he's kind of fallen off, or maybe it's not fair to say he's fallen off, and rather he was not placed around as strong a roster as he was on like Misfits and whatnot.
yeah,
But like Power of Evil, so good this past summer. And not to mention, it's kind of an interesting tidbit. This is the third mid laner TSM has ever had. So he's kind of got shoes to fill in that regard. But if anyone had to come in and step in for Bjergsen, obviously withholding someone like Perks, who going to TSM was probably never really in the picture for
Yeah,
him. Power of
yeah.
Evil is a great person to make that mid laner.
Oh, absolutely. And if we're talking about one thing that Power of Evil always gets kind of rebuked on, it's kind of his one quality that's not fantastic as a mid laner, is his inability to impact the rest of the map. And that is to say, typically you're going to see him on his Azir staying mid lane while people are fighting, which is fine, right? He's getting that farm up, he's scaling the Azir, but then how much do you lose for it? And the fact
That
of the
is
matter
true.
is, you've got Bjergsen coaching you. I think any small amount of corrections you need out of a top tier mid laner, he's going to get.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think it's super fair to say Power of Evil was never like it's never a good roamer. Like we've seen in like the FlyQuest tournament run of this past summer, he's
mhm,
willing to do this roaming if the team really necessitates it. It is fair to your point though, Power of Evil is never the kind of player who likes to go and impact the rest of the map. He's the kind of guy who wants to put the game on his back and win the game on his terms because the number one person PoE can trust is PoE, but he is like able to play that roaming style. And I think like if a game or a meta really necessitates Power of Evil playing roaming mids, especially with
mhm.
like the other laners that TSM has acquired, I think he'll be able to bust that out.
Yeah, and kind of going off on that roaming fashion, right? And if we're talking about a TSM team that might play around PoE, we might be seeing their newest addition from China coming in and helping that whole aspect out. We saw Sword Art. Uh, for anyone who wasn't aware, Sword Art was on Suning. Before this, he was the support. They got second in Worlds, and he was one of Suning's best players, like by a large
Yeah,
margin. And
yeah,
his favorite champions, Leona and Bard, both in fantastic places right now, and both terrifying during on the international stage when he was constantly harassing the jungler and the mid laner.
yeah. Sword Art is so good. Su Ning may be his most recent Worlds final, but this was by no means his first. Sword Art has played for the Flash Wolves in past, who have gone against, I believe, I've gone against SKT in 2015
Yep.
at the Worlds finals. Sword Art is just so good, and he's so consistently a top international support. Not to mention, we've heard kind of some rumors about double, or maybe they're not, maybe they're more than rumors at this point. Information about like the specifics about like why Sword Art was brought into TSM.
Hmm.
Sword Art, I'll start over. A lot of concerns with like bringing in international supports, in particular, someone in the role of support that's such a communicative role, has
Yeah.
to do with the communication aspect of the game. For example, if you'll remember Ole back in 2017 and back in Liquid's 2018, I think 2019 roster as well.
Have
I
to
think
check
2019
that.
roster as well.
Hmm.
But regardless, Ole was someone who was brought into to Immortals back in the day, and just did not speak English very well, and you could tell that the bot lane suffered communicatively for it. Sword Art speaks almost perfect English coming into the North American League of Legends Championship. So like that kind of he doesn't have that same kind of bar holding him that a lot of international players and particularly supports do of the communication. Sword Art is an internationally acclaimed support who is going to be really able to communicate with his team right out of the bat. So we'll see what kind of expertise he brings the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's not the only international player that we're going to see here on TSM either. We have lost in this
Yeah,
coming in as a OPL player, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah,
And we're going to have to. I mean, TSM has really been hyping him up, to be honest.
yeah.
TSM is throwing
So
him in every single advertisement they've had over the past 4 months. It's been
yeah.
amazing to
So
watch, to be honest.
Lawrence Hui is such he seems like such a good dude. Like he has such a good work ethic. I've seen him compare to kind of the anti Doublelift before, whereas
Hmm.
Doublelift's whole work ethic thing was like everyone else is trash and I am the best and I'm gonna go out there and prove I'm the best every single day. Lost is more of the guy who's gonna be like, this is a wonderful opportunity I've been given and I'm so lucky to be here and I just want to do my best to like help my team. That
Hmm.
being said, I don't think it's very controversial to say that while Doublelift did not have his best performing summer as of late, going from a player like Doublelift, the most winning player in North American LCS history, to a guy like Lost, who is pretty good in his own right. Lost has seen a fair amount of success. He saw a fair amount of success. He played for Echo Fox back when that was a team. He's played
Yep.
for TSM Academy for a while.
Yep.
Um, but Lost just like he is not one of the best AD carries in the league coming into that. Like you have to look at the super stacked teams right now. You look at people like Sven,
Hmm.
Tactical, FBI, even players like Johnson and Wild Turtle are kind of outperforming Lost as of late. So while I wouldn't sleep on Lost by any means, Lost is not a bad player, and I don't want to give off the impression that that anyone should think Lost is a bad player. Uh,
Sure, sure. No,
I'll
of
give him the
course.
he is the Demonte of this team, where he might not be he's not a bad player, not at all. He's definitely the fifth most important part of this 5-man roster. But it's also kind of important to mention though that right under him in that academy role is Cody's son, and we've seen before some of these kind of
Hmm.
storied. I won't say Cody's son is particularly storied actually, but some of these kind of more familiar faces to the LCS, when a starting player is not performing well, the academy player just comes on in. I don't think there's no chance that if Lost underperforms, we could see TSM Cody's son stepping into the main roster.
That's an interesting point. Honestly, I had forgotten that Cody Sun was even off a main roster right now. Because it's so I'm so used to seeing him. But that's a really good point where even if Lost doesn't perform, and again, a guy like that can actually end up being the glue, similar to Santorin, where they don't care about their own performance as much as making sure the team wins.
Yeah,
We might see Lost do really well, but worst case scenario, you do have Cody Sun as a backup, which could be huge. I totally
yeah,
agree. And what we're left with here is the top lane, which
yeah.
is not going to go poorly for you. You have Huni right now in the top lane, who
Ooh,
originally came from Korea. He used to even play with Faker on SKT, and he's been here long enough where there's no international trade rules or anything going on there, and he has made his presence well known in the
yeah.
LCS. He is terrifying. His gangplank, especially, is terrifying. And what you've seen a lot more of recently, even, are his Gnar. Not even recently. His Gnar is also still
Yeah,
terrifying.
his
But
Nar has
Shen.
always been there.
But
The
Shen, you've seen
tanks
a
from
little
his
bit
great.
more of, which is always a good play. I think it's something that's always been safe, and you can really play around your team. And like we said earlier, if we're potentially looking at a play around PoE, that could be exactly what they need. Um,
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about playing around PoE this, playing around PoE that. Man, Huni is the carry of this team. Huni is the muscles of TSM's body. If you aren't too familiar with Huni's kind of, I won't say famous, I won't say infamous career. Huni has had a pretty big reputation over the years as being the kind of guy who would only play carry top laners. He's kind of done a lot to dissuade that. Like we mentioned, he's picked up the Shen. He's more willing to play the Gnar than he was in seasons past, even though he's always kind of played Gnar. But
mhm.
Huni is a carry in his own right, and you see this TSM roster transitioning from Broken Blade, who was also a player who was very known for his carry top style. But Broken Blade was one of the only top laners this past summer who were willing to play the carry top in the meta, and
The
it worked out really
Camille
well
sort
for
of thing.
yeah, the Camille, I forget what other picks Broken Blade had under his belt, admittedly. But I do distinctly remember that Broken Blade is one of the only players to be playing carry tops. Huni
Hmm.
is like one of the most famous carry top players.
Yeah.
And so I will also say Huni has shown that his aggression can be kind of coin flippy. Huni has won
Hmm.
teams for his game, and Huni has won games for his team.
Yeah.
Huni has definitely lost games for his team more than once. However, if we're going off that kind of same logic as like we're talking about how if Lost underperforms, you have Cody Sun underneath him. Right
Hmm.
under Huni, TSM has a familiar face in the top lane. That being Hanser is now their academy top laner.
Is he really?
So Hanser is back on the
Oh my
squad
god.
unofficially. So yeah, if Huni is not performing, Hanser has the ability to step up back in the top lane. You'll remember Hanser, of course, from being the top laner in that Dark Horse Golden Guardians run.
Yes. Yes.
So TSM has kind of a lot of good structure in place to be able to say, hey, if this start if like our most coin flippy starting players are not working, they have kind of players underneath to be able to kind of support that roster and to make the exchanges they need to experiment with this roster if they decide that's the route they want to go.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's amazing. Actually, I hadn't even realized that Haunter was under Hooney in the academy.
He's back,
It
baby.
This might be the most unique team that we're gonna discuss this week, and not because of any single one of them, but that situation of having two carry roles, two of your three carry roles, if we're considering laners, that
Yeah.
with backups that are playoff ready players and playoff seasoned players. I don't think
Hmm.
any other team has that availability to switch things in and out. That being said, that could be a curse as well. If you switch too much and you never get consistency, that can hurt a team as well. But
Yeah. Uh,
I
that's
think
kind
the
of that'll be
assurance is
kind of
good.
on or sorry, yeah, that'll be kind of on TSM to decide like which iteration of this roster are we going with. And to start, like we kind of mentioned earlier, they're currently kind of putting their eggs in the basket of saying Hooney and Lost will be their starting players. We'll
Yeah.
see how long that goes. I could see it being really bad if like players like Cody Sun and Hooney are playing together, for example. Cody Sun is kind of very infamous for being a super KDA he plays very much for his KDA. He's not entirely a KDA player. So having kind of a KDA, I don't want to call him a KDA player, but it's not a bad description of him. Having that kind of player in the bot lane, as well as having a top laner who is used to receiving resources, could kind of spread
Yeah.
Spica pretty thin if people are worried about that. That being said, you have really no reason to assume that Lost is going to do poorly in the start. So maybe talking about all these hypothetical switches are
Hmm.
nothing but hearsay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And something we'll have to keep a look out for, especially during lock-in tournament. Everything is being decided. Um, but if I'm going for one person on TSM side, one person I believe in, I think top performer, I'm pulling onto my fantasy team, for example, Power of Evil. We're still, I mean, top three mid laner until proven otherwise, and I. You can call Hooney the carry. I think PoE is still going to be that one, especially with Sword Art helping him out from below. Um, but that's my pick.
Yeah. I mean, hey, you say PoE because Sword Art will help when I'm out. I say cut out the middleman. Screw him. I'm picking Sword Art for my fantasy team. I think Sword Art right now is a top two support in the league, and he has not played in the LCS right now. I think the only kind of other person, and I'll say I do kind of think at the moment I would consider him under Core JJ, only because Core JJ has shown that he has the consistency, the performance, and the support carry ability. And we just kind of haven't seen that from Sword Art. Sure, Sword Art is a super good player, but he's always had these other pieces that have allowed him to be the star of his team. But like you mentioned, Sword Art
Hmm.
will have the agency on this TSM squad, be roaming about the map, get those assists wherever he can, get those plays for his team, win his teams the game. Maybe who knows, win TSM another spring, but that might be I might be looking too far into the future for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's heard us say enough about Core JJ last night, which is, I mean, isn't really ever enough. But
Yeah.
Sword Art definitely had a tank of a team. I mean, a Worlds team. They got second. Um, just can't really go against that.
You
And any
can't
single one of
overstate.
their, you can't go against any one of their players, to be honest. But
Yep.
regardless, I think that's all we've got for tonight, or for today rather. I look forward to hashing this out again later tonight. We have one more big name team. I think I can now call them a big name team, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll see you around for that very soon.